Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another episode of Vash Sky ParkCast. My name is Vash Sky, and here to welcome you to this amazing show right here. This is quite the day here with the earnings call. A little bump in Disney's stock price right there. At least the last time I checked, it was up by like 2% or something like that. So, a pretty good earnings call, given the fact that they've basically languished at that $100 valuation for quite some time right there. Hopefully their prospects increase now that I guess they're going to take that money that they've actually absorbed with the selling off of 50% of A&E and actually invest that back into buying stock. They consider it undervalued. We'll see if that actually works out for you. But it should be a very interesting discussion going over that earnings call right there. Also talking about some theme park related fare like Haunted Mansion's redo that you just saw. The repaint that it just underwent right there. What does that mean for the future of that classic attraction right there? And maybe there's some other evidence that suggests that, well, big changes are coming. Premier Pass pricing is very, very interesting for sure because, well, it's actually hit a new low. One that, well, previously didn't exist, which is also very interesting. The Electrical Parade, you know, that classic Twinkle Light Parade from 1972. It might be coming back for the 55th anniversary. Or is it? Not sure. We're going to be examining that and a whole bunch more here on the Vash Sky ParkCast. Thank you so much, Skylanders and Skywatchers, for coming on in. And we have a couple of people actually in the chat that are very, very excited to be part of this program. Like Juliet, for example. Thank you so much with the £5 sterling. Evening, Vash Sky ParkCast Skyliners and Skywatchers. Very, very cool. Thank you so much, Juliet. Very much appreciate you. Saw you today earlier on the Valiant Renegade program. That is crazy. You have been on all of this stuff for like 6 hours now. It's pretty remarkable and a testament to your endurance, ma'am. Dude Man Cuz coming in here with the $10. Thank you so much. Hail Skyliners and Skywatchers and hail Vash. Well, I do appreciate that. Very much appreciate that, Dude Man Cuz, because that is awesome right here. We're trying to give you all the content possible. We're trying to give you some great shows. And we had a great program, actually, well, with somebody who is joining me today when it came to theme parking. You know him. You love him. It's Jared from Capture the Magic. Hello there, Jared. Welcome on to the program. If I can get you on screen. There you go.
What's up? How's it going?
Going pretty good. Thank you so much for joining me on this earnings call day right here. These earnings call discussions can get a little dry, Jared, so I really do appreciate it.
They're a little boring. Quite boring first thing in the morning. I was drinking coffee and I'm just like, and Josh, I will give him credit. He is more transparent, but he likes to talk. And sometimes he goes on these answers and I'm like, okay, just get to the point, man. We get it.
He's talking around these things and it's like, how are you able to create these answers out of nothing? I have a theory when it comes to that, Jared. I have a real strong suspicion that there might be some assistance involved. I'll get to that in just a moment right here. Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? Freedom Seeker, though, assisting us with the Vash Sky ParkCast gifted membership. A new Skywatcher is among us, and that is Jeff Basigalupo right there. Jeff! He's a new Skywatcher right there. Love him. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that, Freedom Seeker. And hey, well, if you are a Skywatcher, well, that actually gets you a ticket right there, the golden ticket, the e-ticket, whatever you want to call it, for the Vash and Vixen program, which this week will be all about the Electrical Parade going back to even before 1972 when it made its debut, all the way until it glowed away forever at Disneyland and then came back. It's very, very bizarre, very, very interesting. Should be a lot of fun, though. That's Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern right there. Also, too, we have our producer extraordinaire in the studio, I do believe. That is Disney Fan 55. I want to go ahead and bring her on screen real fast. Disney Fan 55, do we have anybody out there in the chat that, well, is so excited, providing us some great commentary that we want to go ahead and highlight before getting on to our first story?
We do. Thank you so much for the super chats and the gifted memberships. So we've got Storybook Sorceress. I saved my ears for you, Vash.
Oh, well, I do appreciate that. Thank you. Hopefully your ears aren't ringing after a Vash Sky ParkCast program right there. And hopefully I it's not too harsh on the earbuds right there. I will say, Jared, some people, they were complimenting me last night on the my dulcet tones, which...
I was gonna say you had some radio voice comments. I mean, you could always do the radio jockey thing, like 5:50 in the AM. Do the what do they used to do back in the day? I forget the ones that used to do the crazy shock jock radio shows. I don't know if to be up your alley, but you've always got a backup plan if you need it.
That's true. That's true. Well, it's funny that you say that, actually, because I used to work at Guitar Center back in the day. And I think this was, back in 2018. Wait, no. Farther than that. 2008, I think, is when I worked at Guitar Center. And while
when
I
the economy
worked there,
was so well, it was just
yeah, that was quite the
story.
time. Hey, let's go ahead and sell a guitar to somebody who can't afford to pay their mortgage. That's going to be fantastic. But it's hard times right there. But I used to get called the radio guy back in the day because I would answer, because you come in all these phone calls, right? And somebody always wants to go ahead, and when they get a phone call, they always want to speak to somebody else. So it's kind of like, Jeff, line 1, accessories on line 1. Jeff, line 1, accessories. That kind of thing. And I would do that, right? And my boss was like, you're the radio guy. So I guess that's fitting.
It was always meant to be, Vash. You're just supposed to be in front of a microphone.
I guess so. That's a weird thing because I've never really liked the sound of my voice. So
it's weird when you edit yourself a lot. You become very comfortable with your own voice because I was the same way. It doesn't bug me anymore, but used to when I'd hear myself talk, I'm like, oh no, you kind of, I don't know, you become accustomed to it. But how you sound in your head and how you sound like on a live stream or on a video is not quite the same. It's a little different. It takes a little to get used to.
No, yeah, you lose a lot of that low end. That is natural reverberation, right? From your body, your mass. And so when you hear it externally, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not how I sound. It's like, yeah, that's how you sound.
For better or for worse, that's how you sound.
That's it. Indeed.
There was actually a study. There was actually a study that said, you do not know what you sound like. You think you sound completely different. Now, I used to be on the phone all the time. So, yeah, it's completely different. But they say, as you listen to yourself in your recordings, your brain actually switches. And now you know what you sound like, and it switches to more of what you sound like. And you might like it, and you may really not like it.
It's so true. It's really, really interesting when you hear recordings of yourself. Like you said, Jared pointed out, you become maybe a little bit more comfortable, maybe a little bit more desensitized to it. But it's really interesting when you start out, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Just Dutchie, though, coming on in here. No starting out for her, because she's been a member for 4 months. Coming in here, capture the facts with Sir Vashery and Jared.
Sir Vashery, that's a good one. I like that. Capture the facts. There's all sorts of slings in there. I like it. I like that.
Absolutely. Just Dutchie's been absolutely awesome right there. Well, actually might be contributing a little bit to our B-roll repository, Jared. Very interesting stuff. Maybe some European parks coming into the equation. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. And can't wait to show you guys that amazing footage that she's working on. That's fantastic right there. TJ McDefee or Tom F coming in here. Don't say Guitar Center. You'll make me want to go buy one. I know, exactly. He's a big fan. By the way, music extraordinaire, responsible for our intro.
Well, shout out to him. That's good. Listen, I can't play any instrument. I'm terrible. The only thing I ever did was the recorder when I was in elementary school, and I did that so. It's not one of my strengths at all. My wife played, I think she was in the orchestra or something like that, but me and instruments, I tried to play guitar one time, and I think I was told, just, you shouldn't do that. And I was like, that's fair. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'll just listen to it.
That's terrible. Oh, man. That must have been real bad if they were like, not for you.
Well, yeah, I think obviously if you practice, and I actually thought about, they say it's good to learn something like that because it kind of gets more mind connection to different things. So I may in the future, but it's not nothing that comes naturally to me by any means. Music and my stuff was always I can talk and I can play sports. I did not get the gift of playing instruments or hearing that stuff in the way you're supposed to, I suppose. So I just enjoy listening to it and marvel at drummers. I don't understand how drummers do what they do. I legitimately like the guys that do the double foot pedals while they're going with their hands. That is mind blowing to me. I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I have no clue.
The Lars Ulrich right there,
Yeah.
some wand, that's always been extremely impressive right there. By the way, for all you out there, you guys might not know this, but I happen to know this. Somebody at the That Park Place Network that you all know and listen to, maybe on the daily, is actually a drummer, or at least he was behind the scenes right there.
Really?
I might be talking about Pro, which is very, very interesting, and it's something right there. So, Disneyland 55. Is there anybody else that we want to go ahead and highlight before starting out?
Well, yeah. Excuse me. Yes, Rudio here, back here. He was saying 12,000. Here we go. Let me just find it again. Here we go. 12,200 and counting. Let's go, Vash. Let's talk about those numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah. We got to talk about those numbers for sure. Very, very interesting stuff, because I think a lot of people are like, whoa, these numbers are huge. They're massive. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, when you see all of the stops that Disney had to pull out in order to, make this quarter look as successful as possible, kind of makes sense when you look at it from afar. We'll go into that and so much more. Also had somebody start, I do believe, talking about my time at Guitar Center. Yeah, I think it was just touchy right here. Vash worked at Guitar Center. No surprises there. Yeah, for sure. That was my dream. My dream was to work at Guitar Center. And then I worked there and I was like, it didn't work out. So
yeah, it's like don't meet your heroes sort of thing. You're just like, you take the risk that they're just a really bad person, and you're like, oh, I liked it better, and I just had the illusion of what I thought it was.
Right, exactly. And so, and it was a really kind of interesting place too, because Guitar Center was becoming more corporate. So you had guys that were there for a while, right? And they were like, oh, this is totally different. And then from what I was, because I was kind of a little bit more accustomed to a corporate atmosphere, I was a little bit like, well, that makes sense. But a lot of the guys who have been there a long time couldn't really adjust. And it was really interesting to see that transition actually take place in front of you. So
I just worked at Sears Parts and Repair and various I worked in a warehouse through college, so I don't know if that translates anything to YouTube or not. I'm a certified fork truck driver. I could do that, and I can now fix washers and dryers as needed. So it actually has stuck with me, some of the things I learned there. But yeah, it was the same thing. I was at Sears when they bought Kmart, and they were like, oh, this is going to be a really big thing. And I'm like, I don't really think this is going to be a really big thing. And it turned out it was Kmart. It's like a failing company buying another failing company, thinking it was going to fix everything. And I'm like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah, probably not right there. Hey, look, listen, I was told that, hey, Disney buying Fox was going to be a huge, huge deal. And it was. Maybe not in the way that they wanted it to be, right? And the company, well, that's kind of languished ever since. Even though they've bought all these different things, well, the stock has kind of languished there at around that $100 figure ever since. That's really kind of sad. Josh Tomorrow, though, he hopes to turn this around. And why not start with the first complete earnings that Josh Tomorrow has been privy to since taking the role right here. Q3, here we go. From finance.yahoo.com, Disney's Q3 earnings top estimates on demand for experiences. Company exits A&E media stake. That's by Brooke DePalma right here over there at Yahoo. Disney stock rose nearly 2% after the company reported fiscal third quarter earnings that beat expectations on Wednesday, as it focused on cutting costs and maintaining growth in parks and streaming. For the quarter, Disney reported adjusted earnings per share of $2.06, surpassing the street's forecast of $1.86. Revenue grew 7% year over year to $25.17 billion, just shy of expectations of $25.38 billion, according to Bloomberg consensus data. This marked the second quarterly report under new CEO Josh Tomorrow, who took the reins on March 18th. Wall Street analysts had been looking forward to Disney's report to build confidence in the stock, which is down 17% over the last year. That's not good. We believe our shares are undervalued, and we continue to lean into share repurchasing during the quarter. It was very interesting, Jared, going over this earnings call right here and all the figures attached to it. This is the letter that they have to investors right here. If we scroll down all the way down, we'll see a little blurb here about A&E. There we go. We believe our shares are undervalued, and we continue to lean into share repurchases during this quarter. In addition, our strategy of simplifying the company and exiting non-core assets, has resulted in an agreement to sell our 50% stake in A&E Global Media to an affiliate of co-owner Hearst Corporation. We plan to use the approximately $1.2 billion in cash proceeds, and I do believe that includes their investment that they were going to make into Sora, but didn't, right? And they will use that to repurchase additional Disney shares and now expect full year fiscal 2026 share repurchases to be at least $9 billion right there. So what they're saying is that they believe that the shares they're undervalued, and so we're going to go ahead and buy them back. So that lessens the amount of available shares in the market right here. Maybe jumpstart it right there. A&E. And, them going ahead and selling that 50% stake right there in order to buy back stock. What do you think about that strategy?
It's interesting. In theory, it can work because anytime, not to go into a huge thing about investing, but anytime you lessen the pool of available shares, theoretically, that can help boost up a stock price. And you will see companies do this artificially. This is when you see companies issue, they do for every one share you get 4, they do a stock split. The value of that stock diminishes because now there's more shares. So technically it could work. Outside of something really bumping it, though, I don't know if that strategy alone will work. I will say it's pretty optimistic on their end to think that it could. So I suppose it sets them up in a position where it could happen, where that stock price does take a little bit of a jump. But I think this also shows you that this is definitely a focus of tomorrow, wanting to get that stock price up, because these are actions you do to try and elicit that type of response. It's interesting. I will say that much. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's interesting to see that this is definitely a focus where they never really have said it's a focus, but obviously with any company, they want that stock price above where it's been. It's been hovering, like you said, around $100 for like a decade at this point. Outside of COVID, when they had the bubble with streaming where it's like $200, came back down to earth, and you're still there a decade later, essentially.
Which means, by the way, if you were to stick your money anywhere else, it would have had appreciating value probably. And the thing about that too is that even though the stock has remained relatively unchanged, well, we all know that monetary value and inflation hasn't. So it actually has lost value, which is really, really unfortunate right there. Oh, I do appreciate it. Well, man, you haven't come on here trying to help us out right here with $10, trying to pay the cable bill right there.
Release
for the internet.
There's a hold on the internet. That'll take care of it.
Exactly. I'll make sure to send Cox Communications right here $10 to try to salvage.
Can I have my internet back, please?
Yeah, please. I'm trying to conduct a live stream here. Please, could you, hold off for just a little while longer right there. Thank you so much, Wild Man. Yeah, but I really do appreciate that. And Freedom Seeker coming in here as well, giving away 5 Vash Sky ParkCast memberships to all of those who stuck around. As he has said right here, Yoo-hoo, Izzo's Place. Oh, Izzo's Place. Very, very cool stuff indeed. Billy Rides, Rebelsi, I do believe. And Jose, do appreciate it. Now you're all Sky Watchers. You get access to that Saturday program that we do, Fashion Vixen, 3 p.m. Eastern. Awesome stuff. To go along with that, though, Jared, I found it a very interesting strategy. We were also talking about, too, and we talked about it last night, actually, talking about the Consumer Products Division. Actually, and it's this unit that sits within the experiences unit, or at least it did, before it was actually plucked out of there and sent on over to the entertainment side of the business, which is very, very interesting. A place where it used to live before Chapek actually got its hands on it, right? When he was made from the head of consumer products to the head of the parks, I believe the chairman position. Parks and Resorts is what it was called. And then it was like, okay, hey, I came from consumer products. Let's go ahead and just merge consumer products with the parks. And that's when it became the Parks, Experiences, and Products Division. Now just the Experiences Division. So it's been this way for, just about a decade or so. And now it's like, well, no. We want consumer products over there. Back where it belongs, or at least that's the impression that Disney is giving. big bucks generating Disney Consumer Products units shifts to Studio Umbrella right here. This by Deadline. In Disney's second corporate shift to the entertainment tent in 6 months. And just before CEO Josh DeMauro leads its Q3 earnings report tomorrow, again, this was yesterday when this was actually recorded, the company unveiled plans to move its revenue-rich consumer products division. The shift seeks to create cohesion across the entire Disney ecosystem and extending the relevance of our franchises for generations. End quote, according to a memo, a joint memo today from Thomas Moslem, chairman Disney Experiences, and Alan Bergman, chairman of Disney Entertainment Studios. We hear a little bit about Bergman every once in a while. We've heard about him again. Disney Consumer Products will shift the majority of its businesses to its Disney Entertainment, sitting within the studios, beginning October 2026. This evolution reflects how these businesses operate today and strengthens that model by more directly linking our consumer products business with the creative and business teams behind the content. This by Deadline here, essentially putting the people who create Disney's IP in the same room as the people who create products based on that IP. The synergy may not be attractive, but it sure as heck is going to be a very big deal. If for their sheer size and cash involved, if nothing else, DCP licensed products did $63 billion in retail sales in 2025. So it's a big unit right here. And Jared, I was racking my brain as to why they would have done something like this. Now, I will say, Thomas Moslem, probably not a consumer products guy. So maybe getting it out from underneath him maybe makes some sense. We also talked about the prospect of video games, right? I remember when Disney Interactive was a thing, and usually it was a very red thing on every single quarter call that we actually would listen to back in the day. And so what they do, they put Disney Interactive into the consumer products, and well, you never heard about Interactive again. So, you know, they're not averse to these changes right here. But I kept thinking about it, Jared. Why would somebody do this? Why would you take the consumer products division? Again, a division that Chapek said was key to the success of the flywheel back in the day, right? He's like, you know, when with the launch of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, for example, we are going to launch 700 different products for this franchise, for this land when it opens in 2019. And that's only made possible by our synergy between consumer products and Imagineering. Like, okay. Fair enough. So why move it now? It was so successful apparently before. I want you to take a look at this. This is a visualization of this latest earnings call, Q3 fiscal year 2026 right there by App Economy Insights. Now, I've shown these graphs before, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you again. I'll break them down again. On the left of frame, we have all the money coming in. So that's revenue, right? All the money coming in for all the different distinct divisions. And you can actually see right down there, experiences, parks, consumer products. And then on the right, after it's gone through the machine, if you were, paying out off all of their debts and so forth, and all of their obligations and all of that, that's when you get the profit on the right. And that's by the little green line up there. And you can see the experiences unit, it, well, makes up the majority again at $3 billion. Jared, consumer products is a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's part of the experiences unit, which we've said a little bit unbalanced, right? When you have that much pressure on the parks division to effectively generate essentially most of your profit for the entire company, it doesn't look that great, especially to investors who look at parks as maybe a legacy business. Separating it out in this way, is this an attempt, Jared, to make this chart maybe a little bit more balanced by having the consumer products division now going from experiences up to entertainment? What say you?
Yeah, I think when looking at that chart, you could definitely make that argument. I think you can make an argument it makes more sense putting it under that. Like, it was always kind of strange to me being under experiences. Part of me also wonders if, and Disney's kind of alluded to this before, and DeMauro even said it in this earnings call, because he actually, and to his credit, he openly said Moana and what was the other movie? Anyways, underperformed. Mando and Grogu. He didn't say a lot, but he said underperformed, But he then had that line where he said, but it led to more merchandise sales. Part of me wonders if they're also doing this because when they do have a movie that doesn't hit, they can point to, and I think they would like to point to, well, sure, the box office maybe lost 200 million, but we gained, maybe we broke even. We sold 200 million or $2 million worth of this X, Y, and Z. And so we kind of helped break even. I kind of think that's what's part of it. But I think balancing that out probably is something that they're trying to do. Just because the more, if any business or anything you have, the same thing with like investing. If you're too heavy in one area, it really does set you up a vulnerability if something happens that line of business. Now,
Correct.
I guess you can read into it. You could say maybe they think there could be some weakness in the parks going forward, and they want a little bit of balance on the other end of that. I don't know if that could be anything to do with that at all. But I don't imagine it's just because they woke up today and they were just, or the other day, and they're just like, we should just move this for the better of the company. I feel like there is something more to it that is not just simply just a synergy perspective, I suppose.
Yes, I think I could see that. I can see that. And I think you make some great points right there. Connecting it so closely with the entertainment side of the business might represent, like Joshua actually says in the chat right there, a more diverse portfolio, maybe a more balanced sheet right there. But it could also maybe help or assist in the profitability of the entertainment segment as a whole. And maybe obfuscate some of those losses, which, by the way, they actually talked about very plainly to the letter to the potential investors right there. Well, audience scores for both Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu, and fiscal quarter four's live action Moana have both been strong. Have they, though? What audience scores are you citing? Hey, are the scores with us in the room right now? Both those underperformed our box office expectations. Even so, these franchise investments contributed to value creation beyond their theatrical releases. As Jared was pointing out right there, they're trying to spin that as to say, oh, these are brand deposits and so forth, and we make so much money on the merchandise and all of that combined right there. We have no problem with these not necessarily making as much money as maybe perhaps they should. But I will say, they are now, I think we're now predicting a $24 billion content spend for fiscal year 2026 for the Walt Disney Company. And as a lot of investors pointed out, that's a lot of content spend that doesn't necessarily go anywhere. We've seen the original slate and those numbers attached to Disney Plus right there. I love this chart because it just really hits home the fact that originals don't really pan out for Disney Plus, and they spend more money on that than anybody else in the business. No question about that right there. You see a chart like this, and it's like, ooh, that's not good. And a lot of investors reporting out because of that content spend. That really does tie up a lot of cash flow right there. Mm-hmm. And you really have to have these things hit big because these are effectively big risks. And I just don't know, Jared. I don't know how this tentpole strategy is going to continue on, especially when they can't even get established franchises like Moana or even Star Wars to hit, as they themselves acknowledge. So I think you're right. I think there's something to be said about consumer products maybe sharing some of that load there.
Yeah, I mean, especially that chart always is interesting to me because in their strategy of Disney Plus it's interesting because they're kind of just more reliant on the movies they release coming onto streaming, and that's kind of the big feature of it. And they really have not been spending much at all, at least recently. They had that big spend they had there for a bit, and then they kind of backed off it, which has helped them be profitable in quarters. I think they're still down overall when it comes to Disney Plus, but I don't know if that strategy continues because even in one of the investor questions today, they even pointed to the fact that they release less content than their biggest competitor, which I think they're pointing to Netflix, which is undoubtedly true. And so it's like they've gone through this before. They have a lot of content spend, and it doesn't pay off for them. Maybe there's also a way of moving the, that end of the business under entertainment, expecting maybe if there are some things they have losses there, but they beef it up a little bit with some of these other sales. So it's like shuffling chairs, really. I mean, you're not really changing what the business is. You're just kind of changing how it's reported and maybe hoping that the perception is there. I don't know if this works on investors because I think investors, if they're smart, they're going to know what's going on one way or the other. But from the optics and just the general population, maybe it paints a different picture of what's going on with the movies, which they have had hits, But the problem with Disney is they've had these hits, and then they have these movies that just drag the whole thing down. It's been very inconsistent. It's either hot or just not. And that's kind of what the box office has been the last few years as well. So if it doesn't hit, I mean, look at Supergirl, 124 million, I think was its overall run. And Spider-Man probably beat that in like a couple hours of its release. So it's like you're just seeing things either feast or famine. And maybe there's some trepidation about, they're going to spend this, but what if this doesn't hit? We need some buffer. Let's move this over here to kind of give us a little bit of cover if that is the case. Potentially is what they could be doing.
And somebody who understands that more than anybody is actually Alan Bergman. He actually gave some comments recently talking about the feast or famine type mentality when it comes to the box office, how discerning consumers are, how much competition there actually is, and how these films really ride or die based on that early word of mouth and everything like that. So really something to hear from him on that, because we've heard like cancellations like Wonder Man, for example, right? I think Alan Bergman's made it pretty clear. No more blank checks, guys. We're going to go ahead and really scrutinize these investments right here. And if your show don't hit, see ya. We are going with another concept. We're going with another route entirely. And Wonder Man, I know some people were saying, oh, it's actually pretty good, but it didn't do the numbers, and it's got to do the numbers. It has to. You can't operate on this whole thing where it's like, oh, well, this is a kind of value creation or whatever, or this is, a plan to actually get market share. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Disney Plus has to be profitable now, not tomorrow.
Yep. Well,
Absolutely.
Well, also, if you look at too, Netflix has a very similar thing they do. They're very quick to cut shows, even shows that are really good. If it's not doing whatever metrics they have internally, they'll just cut it loose and do something different. And so maybe they're taking a little bit of that Netflix mentality, unless you're running an art house where you don't care about the things of like, oh, it's we had really good reviews. That's great. But like you were saying, if it doesn't sell, if it doesn't get subscriptions, doesn't sell movie tickets, it ultimately doesn't really matter. Because if people aren't buying tickets to see it, then how also is it going to help with apparel sales or merchandise sales?
Right.
That's a hard argument to make that Moana live action bombed, but we saw an uptick in sales. I would like to see the chart of showing Moana sales, before and after this movie came out, because that is still a property that sells merchandise, especially to little kids, off the original cartoon. I don't think maybe there is a chart that shows it. But, that is kind of interesting, the way that they would set that up. And I get the rhetoric. They're going to have their corporate talk about, well, it was received really well. But ultimately, like, either it sells or it doesn't. That's just kind of the bottom line.
Absolutely. 100%. And they were saying that licensing or I think it was consumer products actually went up by 7% based off of like Toy Story 5, and I think they were saying Mandalorian and Grogu or something like that. And it's like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm really gonna have to see some more granular numbers showing this data, because, and Josh D'Amaro said, oh yeah, well, we opened Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run during this time, and obviously you incorporated Mandalorian and Grogu. And Jared, I remember being there, going over the numbers with you. It didn't move an inch. And I just can't believe, like you said, right, if people didn't actually go to the movie and go on the ride, did they necessarily buy the product? I'm just not seeing it. Maybe there's some new Grogu dolls or something like that, but those might be entirely separate from those brand deposit films like Mandalorian and Grogu, or maybe even perhaps Moana in that way, which this might explain internally why they're going forward with something like Tangled, right? Everybody thought that they were going to get out of the live action game, especially based off of the horrific performance of Snow White back in the day. But it looks like they are going forward. It looks like they are doing the Tangled thing, and they're filming in Europe right now. And I'm sure you've seen some production photos yourself, guys, on social media there. They're going forward with it. And maybe they do look at it like, hey, this is brand deposit. This is keeping this franchise relevant. This is, even if the movie doesn't do well financially, we still move product, which I think that dilutes your brand. I don't think it makes it better. I think it makes it worse, and it's kind of cash grabby to me. What say you?
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the live action remakes. I can understand on some some level why you might do, especially talking about the older cartoons, keeping them relevant. But these newer ones, I've always been like, do we really need a Moana live action? And clearly audiences didn't react to that. Part of me thinks they also do this because they do have a fervent fan base. And even if a movie bombs, the Disney audience, for whatever it is there, will go see these things, and they will probably buy merchandise, and maybe they'll go on cruise ships. So like maybe they also look at it as, if it doesn't have commercial success, it's depositing a little bit of something into their existing fan base. But I don't think that's something you're going to sell to investors as a good idea, considering, unless you're seeing unless you're just seeing like the movie doesn't do well, but all of a sudden the merchandise sales are crazy. But I haven't seen anything that points to that would justify it. But I think a lot of this thinking, though, is these are now the pipelines to Disney Plus, essentially. And so it's not a bad strategy if you pull it off well, of saying like brand deposits into these things. I'm not saying that in itself is a bad strategy, but if you don't follow it up with like really good movies, like we've seen with, obviously, Spider-Man has hit audiences very, very well, that they're reacting well to that. They did not react well to Moana. They didn't react well to Mando and Grogu. There's also things going on around these brands as a whole, like Star Wars, and just the overall, where people are with like live action remakes. I don't know. They have got addicted to the tentpole. I think Marvel really set them up for that. And I think this is one reason why they'll use a lot of AI to try and bring down production costs, to be able to do more movies that are not as expensive, that will fit into what they want to do. But as of right now, like every one of these movies, like $250 million plus, and they need to hit close to $1 billion to really make it justified. Some are and some aren't. It's just kind of inconsistent on which ones are kind of hitting and which ones are kind of just not resonating. And there's really no middle ground, like we were saying.
Absolutely. And this is with established franchises, by the way, like Moana. They've had a real tough time establishing original fare. And like I was saying before in that Park Place, if there is one big chink in this armor, if there is something that everybody will agree upon when it comes to the financial performance or even the creative performance of the Walt Disney Company, they cannot get an original either character established, with a big franchise like Marvel, for example, or even just an original film, original concept as conceived by Pixar or even Disney Animation, to save their lives. They just cannot do it. They are incapable of doing that. And so, I mean, yeah, you could follow the strategy that Bob Iger certainly turned into Overdrive, which is, suck these franchises for all they're worth, but that only gets you so far. You have to have new things in the pipeline. You have to be laying, down the seeds for something to grow in order to keep this flywheel continue, turning long term. I just don't know if they're able to do that right now. It really says something about the creative output of this company.
Yeah, and Storybook Sources has a really good point. She said, and then you have Cars, no movie from that franchise, Lord knows how many years, but continually crushes merchandise sales. Then there's Stitch and Frozen, which continue to sell no matter what. That is also the thing, too. If they're going to point to that as something that sells merchandise, then how do you explain like Cars? How do you explain some of these things that sell in perpetuity off of their original stuff? I agree with you. You can look at it as brand deposits that maybe help it, but at the same time, you can dilute the brand. You could take a cash cow, like if, God forbid they ever do like a live action Cars or something. That'd
be horrifying.
Yeah, just like, what are we doing? And like you could potentially mess up something that is kind of a built-in like moneymaker for you. So it's there's obviously downsides too. And I think in recent history, I think the best live actions were probably like Cinderella, some of those first ones you could say. But as it's gone along, it's like now we're scraping the bottom of the barrel with Moana that came out less than, 10 years ago. The original movie came out. Now we're doing a live action off that. It's just some of these things like it always seems like it's been Disney's problem of really lately of like what audiences really want. And it's like they're kind of just blindfolded throwing darts at a board, and they hit it every once in a while. Maybe they got a little peek under the thing, they got a little idea, but some of these it seems like they have no idea where the appetite for these things are. Because the first time I saw the photos coming out of Moana and the trailer, I was like, this is not going to do well. Like immediately, not that I'm always right, but I was like, I just don't see this. And sure enough, it didn't. And so it's just like, do they have the discernment to really understand what audiences want right now? Put that in first. I shouldn't have put it out there because I don't even know what that monstrosity of a live action Cars would look like. That would be, I don't even know. That'd be terrifying in many ways.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. I shiver to think about this. Hopefully it never comes to fruition. Eric and Raph, though, saying something very interesting. I don't mind live actions with classic fairy tales because you can get away with it. But they really shot themselves in the foot with Snow White, really causing
Yeah.
distrust. Indeed. Yeah, a lot of people have been questioning whether or not they could even pull off their live action fare. And Snow White was like that wasn't, it didn't all like go well and then stop with Snow White. No, it was kind of heading down that, weaker trend right there, certainly with like Little Mermaid before it and so forth. So there has been some real questions, I would think, in the mind of the consumer, whether or not they they can actually pull this stuff off. Obviously, Avarice, Carmageddon right here, Frozen 3, 4, 5 in the pipeline. No more live action remakes from Eddie's studio. That's true. I think, well, we did hear about that Tiana project, which if we have enough time, we'll get to on this show right here. Because I'm
rumblings about that one out there.
Right. It's like, oh no, are we making those same mistakes all over again? And it really deals with this conversation, right? Because it's like, Tiana didn't really do all that well in the box office when it was originally released.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have some writers being attached to that project looking to do like a live action, almost like spin-off story or something, where it's not necessarily bringing to life the animated film, but it's like another story. This is really interesting, Jared, because when you look at Tiana and its history within Disney's halls there, they're not really that fond of the original story of Princess and the Frog.
I was actually ready to say I think they would do that because they do not like the Dr. Facilier storyline.
Mm-hmm. They don't like the Dr. Facilier storyline, but they also don't like the fact that, well, it's the first Black Princess and she's a frog for most of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that may have, you bring up Dr. Facilier. I think with those points, it's why they went forward with a next chapter story for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Also, too, they went forward with the animated project that they were working on. That was going to be a next chapter story too. And well, that never got off the ground. So now we're going back and trying to get on the Tiana train again. I don't know if that train's going to take you anywhere, but they feel that, hey, maybe even if it doesn't hit, it will still rejuvenize interest in the brand, perhaps, and maybe justify not one, not two, not three, but like 4 distinct locations that you can find Tiana in. Like Disneyland. 5 if you include the attraction. It's crazy. It's actually kind of insane that she has such a big presence at Disneyland right now. Certainly a lot of presence at Walt Disney World as well. Yes, here we go. That's the article I was thinking of right here. Let's see right here. Coleman Domingo and Robert O'Hara in talks to write live-action Princess Tiana movie, and something that's not going to be actually a shot-for-shot remake of the actual animated film that came out. No. This is going to be a separate project entirely, which is kind of interesting because Tiana's kind of in the news for all the wrong reasons right now when it comes to duct tape gate right here. Let's see if we can actually put this on. So embarrassing malfunction plagued Disney ride ripped over duct tape prop. I know this is kind of a tangent off the earnings call, but I just kind of wanted to include this right here because Disney parks are kind of done with Tiana, it would appear like. You can see right here some horizontal duct tape. They fixed it though. They went with the side duct tape right there. Just to the side, and nobody actually notices it. Finally, though, it was removed officially, which is very, very good. But Jared, it's like the same problem still exists. This is Tiana's Bayou Adventure. That's not changing anytime soon. Is there, I don't know, is there any enthusiasm for this franchise? Do you think audiences will show up to a Tiana-related film at the box office? Is this a good strategy? What say you?
Tiana's one of those things where I think we all know, why they push the presence more and what, there are people that are into that movie, but you're right. The original movie is not like it blew the doors off the box office and anything they've had subsequently. I don't know how the merchandise sales are for it, but I mean, when you're talking duct tape, listen, I'm from Missouri. You use duct tape to fix a lot of stuff, but I also, I'm not running attractions that bring in, millions of people a year. So it's probably not the best look in the world to do that. It's kind of funny how that ride is, even from people that were kind of for it, when they were putting it in are now just like, this thing is in rough shape. It has been in rough shape since they both opened on both coasts, and it kind of adds to the lore of this ride that the duct tape is being used on props and things like that. But Tiana, I don't really know. I mean, from what I can see, I don't see a lot of enthusiasm. I don't know how it resonates with like the youth. I can tell you my daughter doesn't really care anything for Tiana. But she's kind of out of that whole princess phase now as well. So it seems to me it's more or less something that they want to happen and not necessarily giving people what they're asking for is how it is perceived to me of when you're talking about like Tiana and pushing in the parks more. Now we're doing maybe a live action remake. Like it just seems like they're just sort of like, we are going to make this a thing one way or the other, or at least try to. That's what it seems like, at least.
It's kind of what it seems like to me. It's like they're really trying to make fetch a thing, and fetch is never going to happen. That's just kind of the bottom line right there. It's just,
I like it.
I said, well, you know, you gotta bust out the references when you can. Yeah. But it is kind of interesting to see them try to really push this franchise out there, try to make it be a franchise, and it just really isn't. I think that's why all of these projects have really either petered out or have really not been embraced by the audiences that they have been placed in front of, like the parks, for example. I think everybody goes on Tiana's because it's the water ride, not necessarily because it's such a great attraction. I don't really see people booking vacations for it. Whereas maybe you could say something different about Splash Mountain, but not Tiana's by Adventure, at least from my vantage. I understand some people like it, they do, but especially in the state that's in constantly. Not so good.
And that was still such a weird thing because I mean, Splash Mountain, for all intents and purposes, is a theme park attraction that any proprietor would have loved. Which was, it's been around for a bit. It still had high demand. It was, you didn't have to do a whole lot with it, and it would draw. And like you were constantly always seeing, especially in the summertime, like hour-long waits, had plenty of demand. It was always rated as a very high attraction people want to go do, and then you redo it, and I would say the current quality of it is not as good as what it was there, but like you took a ride that was like, hey, don't mess with this thing. This thing is fine how it is. It has demand. It draws people in, and you tinkered with it. And I just don't think that's if you want to do a separate attraction, but I think that kind of also shows you they may not have trusted, if they are trying to push Tiana, well, if we open up a brand new ride or a land off of this, is there really going to be people that are drawn to this? But you can kind of use Splash Mountain's own, commodity. The basics of that ride are still the same. We're just going to redress it, and hopefully that the demand is high, and then that can justify, well, look, people love Tiana, even though it might more or less be because, Splash Mountain was established for decades. You rethemed it. That could be somewhat what's going on there. I think, personally speaking, I think if you really believed in the brand, you wouldn't necessarily just overlay an attraction for it. You would actually create something new for it, would be my thinking.
So. Yeah.
But
I mean, you think so? You think that you would give it its own attraction, give it its own footprint, its own hollow ground, and not necessarily live within the shadow of something that was pretty much universally beloved. I mean, I understand there were detractors and saying, Splash Mountain had to go for obvious reasons. It's like, no. If you ask 10 out of 10 people, they don't even know that it's connected to Song of the South. Yeah. And certainly I don't find offensive. That was, a manifestation off of Twitter as it previously existed, not necessarily a reflection of real life. And I think the Walt Disney Company has kind of come to terms with that. Oh, please.
Yeah. Didn't that stem from Bob Iger? Wasn't Bob Iger the one that initially said something that kind of set that off as to why they kind of decided that ride was problematic? I thought I remember Bob Iger having some statement that was really the first time that really started circulating, but I could be wrong.
Was that over Tiana's Splash Mountain, or was that more about the RCID?
I don't recall. I thought I remembered something that came from Iger, but I could be mistaken on that. But it was years before they did anything with it. But that kind of, at least remember, that kind of started the whole momentum about we need to get rid of Splash Mountain, and Iger was kind of pushing that as well from his perch of CEO position.
Well, I mean, yeah. So it was a very contentious time, as you know, right? Over the history of it, Chapek becomes the CEO, February or March, I do believe, right? And then later on, it's 2020, and then obviously entire country shuts down. And
Right.
obviously you had that horrible event that actually happens in Minneapolis. And then everything just cascades from there, right? And that's when Walt Disney Company, out of the blue, says, Splash Mountain's going away. We're doing a Tiana ride. And it was like, whoa, that's kind of a big deal. And I remember talking to people internally who were working at the company saying, I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen an announcement get shoehorned onto the Disney Parks blog like this one. It was just completely bizarre. And yeah, it was a different time for sure.
Yeah.
Now, though, so many years removed from all of those events right there, again, I just don't know how much interest there is for Tiana. And that's why they haven't necessarily put a lot of emphasis on actually developing a lot of this content that is supposedly going to be Tiana themed right there. So I don't know. They're certainly not putting emphasis on the attraction itself, because if you go on either location, whether it be Tiana's by Adventure at Walt Disney World or Tiana's by Adventure, terrible name, at Disneyland, you get the same result. A bunch of audio animatronics, far less than what we had with Splash Mountain, and they all don't work. In their own way, of course.
Yeah.
Which is very, very interesting. I'll bring it back here, though, to the earnings call, because there was something else I wanted to go ahead and bring to your attention right here. I thought this was a very interesting question as posed by Rich Greenfield at Lightshed Partners. I do believe Valiant actually said, I'm waiting for Rich. And well, Rich brought the goods. Says, you've rolled out several new discount programs at U.S. parks recently. There's an after 2 p.m. pricing at Walt Disney World, Anaheim resident pricing at Disneyland, and now even an evening access option. Are these designed to offset continued weakness in international visitation? Do they signal an increased concern about attendance trends? It's very interesting because it seems like the Walt Disney Company was prepared for this question specifically, because for the first time ever that I've ever seen, they actually charted out global guest change. Never quite seen this before, at least in this way. Now, again, we are very far from the pre-2020 highs right there, the 2019 and everything before that, the very highs when international visitation to Walt Disney World was not only guaranteed, but it actually represented a lot of cash spent. And we've heard, ever since the pandemic and those effects, international guests either have a hard time getting into the United States, or they're simply not interested. They're just not going. And so Disney has been asked over and over again, what about that international spend? What about the international guests and so forth? Because it represented a large part of the overall profit for the entirety of the Walt Disney Company, not even just limited to parks experiences and all of that. See right here, global guest change versus prior year. Hey, look, 4%. This is really, really laid it on thick right here. But it is kind of interesting to that Rich was able to couch this within this question of, why are you discounting so heavily? Doesn't that kind of dilute your product in a way? Don't people at some point kind of expect to get a deal? Like, for example, well, I'll give you 2 examples, Jared, and then I'll let you go ahead. The first thing that comes to mind is like Subway, right? Subway had the $5 foot.
Oh yeah.
I had it for years. And well, at a certain point, everybody kind of got used to getting a footlong for $5, and they would expect it. Now, for the franchises, they were like, ooh, we can't necessarily provide a footlong at $5. And so when this cost went up accordingly, with inflation and everything else, it was a lot more than $5. And nobody actually was willing to pay for it. Example 2 I'll give you, which is very, very interesting. Wait a minute. What was my second example? Wait a minute. I had something. Yes. I do apologize. I was talking to my friend Marty. Marty, he's been an annual pass holder at Disneyland for 35 years. I mean, every single time that price goes up, he's there. He's opening up the checkbook, and he is getting those passes, which for his family now, I think we charted it out as well over $5,000. That's just for the 3 of them to get annual passes for Disneyland. Again, been going on a long time. Now he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and take advantage of those discounts and deals and not retain my annual pass. And we'll see where this goes. Now called the Magic Key, of course. Jared, it's a very interesting idea that people, once you discount enough, they start to kind of expect it at that price. Is there a real risk of that going on? Or is it just kind of hot air? I know Hugh Johnston and Josh Tomorrow basically shrugged that question off. What say you?
They did shrug it off. You also have the example like JCPenney. Remember they tried to get rid of their coupon stuff, and that didn't work out very well. And they went right back to it because the audience and their customers were very much conditioned to you're getting a discount on everything that you buy. This is something I brought up before. Is I think their thinking is they're going to have to discount during this period of time of construction and really kind of not a whole lot new. And what do we know about theme parks? New stuff brings people in, and they're banking on when these things open. That then, and by the way, the prices are only going to go up by the time these things open, that there's going to be enough demand there that people are going to pay it. Maybe that could happen, but you also could be talking about that same thing where it's like you get the audience conditioned to these discounts, and then you start, like, even if you want to go and all of a sudden you look at the price tag and you're just like, it's not that we don't want to go, but like we're not spending this money to do this sort of thing.
Right.
And so I do think like, it is a risk. And I think this is what happened whenever they waited so long to answer for Epic Universe, that now they're in this kind of position now where it's taken this long to build this stuff. And it's been talked about by Moffat Nathanson and by anybody really looking at this, that, the Disney attendance during this time period, is going to either stay stagnant, maybe rise 1%, maybe fall 1%, but like, it's not going to go anywhere significant. So then you get into discounts because obviously you don't run discounts unless you need to. I always point this out. If your bookings are full at full price, why would you run discounts? So you're running discounts because you see something and then the audience responds to it. Well, what happens when you yank those away? You better hope that you have enough demand to justify that, and maybe they will, but I do think it's a risk. I think they are running this risk of, and I don't know how that would even look as if they open up these new lands and the bookings aren't quite where they want them, and maybe they're forced to still run out discounts. Maybe, and it could just be simply, companies will do this too, where they price things higher than they actually know people will pay because they're going to run discounts. It could be an optics thing, but I think you could run the risk. And like you were saying, the audience has become very conditioned to these discounts, and if they're no longer there, depending on a lot of the macroeconomic factors going on, it doesn't mean people are going to automatically come just because you build this new stuff. It's definitely a risk there.
I think there's a big risk, right? I think there's a big risk where people are, like you said, are conditioned to expect a discount. And I will say, when it comes to Disneyland and visits there, I'm kind of waiting for discounts as well before actually going back there, because it's kind of like, this trips over here is expensive. I kind of don't want to necessarily pay full price anymore because it is so outrageous. And whether that's, maybe a 3-day ticket offer or maybe a 5-day ticket offer, it could be as simple as that. But what I'm saying is even me who loves Disneyland, is kind of like, I don't know, this is a little rich. And it's really interesting because I love how you bring up discounts and the broader problem maybe perhaps with them, because here's from Walt Disney World News Today. You tell me whether or not, after hearing the story, whether you think Lightning Lane is really performing to expectation with this. Lightning Lane Premier Pass pricing at Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom now at record low. It's by Alice Kennedy right here, August 5th, 2026. While many guests are used to record highs for food, Lightning Lane, and ticket pricing, Disney has actually lowered the pricing of Premier Pass at Magic Kingdom and at Animal Kingdom. At Magic Kingdom, Premier Pass pricing has dropped to $2.99 per person on August 23rd and August 25th. Previously, the lows were $3.29, and when they debuted this product, that was the advertised low. You can see right here, October 16, 2024. The low for Magic Kingdom was $3.29 to $4.49. Now they're selling this specific product at $2.99. Now, the opt-in for Lightning Lane might be high, might be low, but for this specific product category of Lightning Lane, it's now being discounted right here. Kind of says not doing all that well. Otherwise, it would be at a higher price, don't you think?
Yeah, and I also think this points to, and they kind of pointed this a little bit, and I think this is, and we'll get into, I'm sure, some of the nitty gritty of the actual theme park numbers, but I think a lot of the attendance right now is being propped up by pass holders, and pass holders are not going to be your audience that's going to buy the premier pass. Your people that go a lot know how to navigate this. They may still get Lightning Lane, just a general one, but they're not going to be dropping $300 on something like this. So I think it's Disney wants the high end people coming to their parks. And same thing. I sound like a broken record, but I've said this before. It's like when you have the discretionary income, first off, you have choices. And so if you have these people that do want to come, but they're sitting there going, yeah, we'll go whenever this stuff's done. Okay. We're not going to drop $10,000-$20,000 on this. And well, we're going to want to go back later. So we're not going to go right now. Well, then you're left with running, and they are running in Disney World. I will tell you, a lot of Florida resident deals, a lot of annual pass holder deals. I think that's what points to a lot of this theme park traffic right now is annual pass holders, which makes sense why they would lower it down that much, because again, you don't lower it if people are buying it. And that is one of those products that is really going to be the people that just, some people just operate in a different sphere. They don't, dropping $1,000 is not that big of a deal, especially if they already dropped however much money they spent on a vacation. They wake up one morning, they're like, yeah, let's just get premier passes and go out here and have a good time. That is not your annual pass holder base for the most part. That is not how they typically, especially the locals, operate. I think that's what that kind of points to, if I were to guess. But undoubtedly, to your point, it's not selling because you wouldn't be lowering it under $300 if it was.
Indeed. And again, those numbers connected with Premier Lightning Lane and maybe the recent July numbers that we've talked about here on this program, Jared, and obviously on yours over there in theme park and other places. Those are part of Q4. Technically. So we won't actually see the results of a lot of these decisions until that earnings call. I think it occurs sometime in November, if I'm not mistaken, because the fiscal year for Disney starts October 1st right there.
Yeah,
so we'll have to wait.
Their fiscal year is really weird compared to everybody else.
It's a little bit strange. But say Levy, that's how they actually operate their business. I want to go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of some of these numbers right here because I think they are fascinating. This here by Florida Politics, Disney theme park attendance grows, fueled by Toy Story 5 success. Loyal fans, Josh Morrow says. Disney World and Disneyland's park attendance jumped 3% for the quarter, helping propel the company's financial earnings, leaders said. Disney's attendance bump comes after both Universal Orlando and SeaWorld theme parks reported a decline in attendance. Quote, there was a fair amount of speculation about the strength of our domestic parks, and well, clearly, they were strong. Josh Morrow says confidently. He told financial analysts during a third quarter earnings call, and to remind everyone, we're achieving this even during a period where there's a fair amount of macro uncertainty, which is also very, very interesting. The company's experiences division, which includes the theme parks and Disney's cruise line, reported nearly $10 billion in third quarter revenue, a 10% increase from Q3 2025. Operating income was up 20% to $3 billion right there. Quote by Josh Morrow, it's important to highlight that we're performing significantly better than our competition. Indeed, they've reiterated this both on the earnings call and on that CNBC appearance that took place before the official earnings call, which I thought was very, very interesting. You can see right here, Disney takes a victory lap as Disney World continues to outpace Universal. And you can see more coverage here. Disney reports, quote, very strong attendance at Walt Disney World, takes shot at Universal. Everybody's passing this around right here. Jared, I thought these numbers are very, very interesting because there's a lot going on within these figures. For one, you had both cruise liners, major investments for the Walt Disney Company, actually both come on and are recorded fully within this quarter together. So Disney Adventure and the Disney Destiny, I do believe, is where we're at right now.
Destiny was the other one, yeah.
Hard to keep all the generic names in place.
I know.
But you also did have, Jared, at Walt Disney World right there, you had the debut of not one, not two, not three, but actually 7 different attractions at Walt Disney World within this quarter, that being from April, May, and June. You had Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, come online April 8th. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, after 1 year of being down right there, maybe some change, reopened May 3rd. Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run obviously opens up with its Mandalorian Grogu update right there, May 22nd. Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets now, not Aerosmith, coming online May 26th. A Disney Junior Mickey Mouse Club Live coming online May 26th as well. Bluey's Wild World coming online May 26th, and Soarin' Across America also on that day on May 26th. Jared, they rolled out the entire red carpet and then some to get these numbers to where they are right now. You had 2 cruise liners actually make their way out there. You had just a dearth of options actually provided to your consumer. And yeah, they got the big numbers. They came with costs. Please, what say you, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, they can't do that every quarter. I mean, that's one of those things.
Right.
Like we saw their lineup, and I'd said last year and one thing I will say about this as well. Now, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think this also points to they did get hit by Epic last year, because I think this could be much more maybe toward the baseline of where they would have been. And tomorrow, they even alluded to it with the question. They said the headwinds. I don't know if they said Epic Universe, but your competitor. And they essentially, to their credit, they did say, yeah, we had some headwinds and we recovered. I think this actually kind of shows you, I'd be very curious to know which one is which, if it is really these attractions that did come open, which I'm sure it helped undoubtedly, some of these refurbs and things, but you maybe no longer have as much of an impact from Epic going on this summer, and that more reflective in these numbers that they're seeing for, their quarter 3.
Well, it's very interesting to say that, because okay, so last year, I mean, they were driven pretty hard by investors.
They said, and all that stuff.
Yeah. Wall Street not taking too kindly the fact that they didn't really even have counter programming for Epic. They just let Epic open and basically eat their lunch. And you saw double-digit gains as expected with Comcast Universal's earnings calls when Epic was new. Well, now that it's a year old and so forth, where are you going to get those gains? And in fact, well, there weren't any gains to be had, which is why you had Universal saying, yeah, there's some broader economic issues actually impacting the area. And they were saying in June, it's going to be impacting the broader Orlando area. Now, Disney might be confident now, but we know those Q4 numbers for them.
Right.
Yikes. I'd love to see those. And they didn't really have much guidance regarding that, because I think everybody knows those Q4 numbers might come up short. We'll see. But when it comes to Q3 for them, right, this is a year after they got all of that pushback, and I think they were trying to make a concerted effort to have some counter programming this year for Epic rather than last year. And that's why they had the big 7 attraction spread, as I just read to you right there. And they may have positioned the fleets to come online during this time, travel season or whatever. So it worked out for them. But like you said, you can't do it every single quarter. And yeah, you might be doing the victory lap now, but again, that was after a year of double-digit gains when Epic actually opened.
Right. Well, and even Universal, I mean, their earnings was a little bit more mixed, but they still showed an increase somewhat in their revenue. So it's not like when you're talking about Disney versus Universal, which it's not like we talked about, they're not set up the same, but they didn't drop down to pre-Epic levels of revenue.
Right.
So they're maintaining some of their gains there, and you can get into some of the math about, they have a lot of expenses with continued construction and Epic, deferring some of that cost over and things like that. So it is quite interesting because they both are up in revenue, and I do think a lot of this is, and you're right, they had no counter programming last year. They had shows and parades, and I think they actually did believe, at least on my channel, a lot of people are like, do they actually believe what they're saying? Like that they actually think that all these people come in for Epic, it's going to translate over. I think they did, because I think their behavior shows you they thought that people were just going to come over here because it's Disney World. And when that didn't quite happen, I mean, you had multiple quarters of, I think the lowest quarter Universal had during the first year of Epic was 19% in growth in revenue. The best one was about 24%. So they were seeing massive jumps, and Disney was showing like, they were still showing jumps in revenue a little bit, but either down a little bit on attendance or maybe up a percentage. So they definitely were not getting the rising tide situation that they had basically laid out. And so
Yeah, I
that
know.
also explains this year why they had this slew of stuff. They're like, oh, geez, okay, we miscalculated that. And I really do wonder. I don't think it had no effect, but I've said, I think we've all said the whole time, a Big Thunder refurb is not going to pull people in to spend, a week at Disney. A Buzz Lightyear refurb, while a much better ride now, is not going to pull people in like that. It's going to probably be more for the pass holders. But I would be very, very curious if they even internally know, was it really these attractions that they threw out there, or was this more or less, Epic does have its issues. It's kind of a known thing now. Plus, Universal's building new stuff as well. So maybe some people are doing that with Universal too. They're like, actually, we're just going to hold off a little bit. And Disney's kind of returning to baseline. That is part of this. I don't know which way, if you did 40-60, 50-50, whatever it is. But at that point, is 3% growth off of these things, would that be considered like, is that money well spent? I suppose is part of the question.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you brought that up, because I think there was an investor actually asking about these capital expenditures and whether or not they will yield greater returns later on, whether those returns will be diminished after a certain point, right? Because everybody's asking about the $60 billion spend for the experiences division. And I believe Yoshimaro says, in terms of future returns, having previously led this segment, I can also say that our capital investments, all of them, they go through very rigorous evaluations and are supported by clear and well-defined return expectations. I have heard internally, and this was years ago, so I don't even know what it is now, but if your project at Imagineering doesn't make its money back within at least 5 years, it doesn't go forward. And so just think about the environment that would, be fostered by that kind of mentality, being the overarching mantra right there. You can kind of imagine, right, Jared? Like, if you're a creative person, maybe it's why. You look at something like Lakeshore Lodge and you think, wow, that just looks like a Hilton. And it doesn't have any expressive theming. It doesn't have, that world-class Disney theming that we've come to expect, maybe from like Wilderness Lodge, for instance. Look at that, and it looks like a Gensler special, at least Lakeshore Lodge. You think, why? Why is that? Well, if in fact we are doing a rigorous evaluation to mandate that you have this kind of return on investment or this ROI, with these projects right there, well, maybe that's why they're value engineered the way they are. Yeah. And it's really sad to see that, and perhaps they didn't want to spend necessarily a lot of money in order to get Muppets in there for Rock and Roller Coaster, because maybe, to your point, they knew that nobody would book a vacation for it. So it was, hey, repaint the building, shoddily, I might add. Get some Muppets, props in there for Muppet Vision 3D. Call it a day. Yeah. Basically what we got, right? Okay, pre-show. All right, sure. We had a little bit of technological advancement with that, but still, it was a very light touch. I mean, I've seen Six Flags parks do a lot more for their coasters to reinvigorate them than Disney did. New trains and new portions of track and new audio and all of that. Didn't do hardly any of that, which is really saying something.
Well, we also knew that's what they were going to do whenever I truly think the Muppets retheme of Rock and Roller Coaster was from the fan reaction of the Muppet Courtyard going away. And I think they were like, oh, these people really are mad about this. And they're also mad about the Rivers of America, but they're going to go forward with this stuff. You can throw the fan base a little bit of a bone and say, okay, Aerosmith's not very relevant. Let's just retheme this to Muppets, throw in a different pre-show. Like, pretty cheap overlay you can do on this. And that's probably why they didn't, like you were saying, they didn't do anything else to it, because they're like, well, we can list this as a new attraction, which technically it is. It's different, reimagine, what are you going to call it? I think that is definitely part of their strategy there on that. Now, I did some people saying in the chat, and I get the point. They're saying the Epic bump is done. I would say, to me, a bump is if it comes back down. I don't think they've come back down off of that, but I think, and OG had said as well, I think the lack of APs at Epic could be something factoring into this, where a lot of people that have gone to Epic are, the local stuff is going to help boost that up. They don't have that at Epic Universe. So you could have a lot of locals that are going to Disney for this new stuff this summer because they can't get Epic APs, and there's really nothing new at Universal this summer. So for the local crowd, they do have some new things for the APs that they'll probably go over there and check that out. What would have been really interesting would have been this quarter if Epic had APs. They didn't have their issues with the wait times. That would have been really interesting to see with all these things that Disney threw at this summer, how that went against a Epic Universe with APs and not having some of their issues that they currently have with like the wait times and things there. Because I think some of that word has gotten out about these expansions that are happening, these wait times, and people are like, well, let's also wait on this until that kind of calms down too.
Right.
At the 1 year mark.
It's a good point. That's a great point to include right here. I mean, look, it's apples to oranges no matter how you slice it. Because, well, guess what? Universal doesn't have 8 domestic theme parks if you include the water parks. They don't have 40 plus resort hotels. They don't have a cruise line, right? So it's like, oh yeah, we're running laps around our competitors. Well, yeah, no blankety blank. We get why that is, probably going to be the likely outcome. But it's very fascinating how they are taking the victory lap now, even though they just got lapped multiple times over for an entire year. Mm-hmm. As far as the Epic Universe jump, I mean, or bump right there, I think it's obviously past its peak, but you still have a lot of demand for that park. If they didn't, you'd have annual pass holders right now.
Right.
You don't, because they're still trying to deal with that demand, and they're not even at full capacity just yet right here. You also, too, let's be honest here, Fast and Furious, right? That was supposed to make its debut in spring, possibly summer. That didn't happen. So for like Hollywood, for instance, they were supposed to have a big old bump from that. That didn't actually, go on right there. Obviously, like you said, there's not really been anything new past the point of Epic Universe's opening for Universal. So all of those things contributing factor into the varied performance right there. Look, Q4 Disney or Q3 Comcast, it's going to be short when it comes to theme park attendance. You might have incremental movement right there, maybe 1% or something like that, or maybe even down 1%. But you're gonna see a hit. Now, it's very interesting also too, Jared. I want to go ahead and bring this up. The guests that you're seeing at Walt Disney World, because I've actually heard like, hey, even though the wait times are low, there's still crowds there. Maybe you have a lot of vibes, not rides kind of guys, maybe some annual pass holders and so forth, right? Even though you have attendance, doesn't necessarily mean they're big spenders. And when it comes to the Twilight Pass, as Rich Greenfield pointed out there from Lightshed on this earnings call, the category of people that you have for that promotion right there, from what I understand, it's been a lot of teenagers. It's been almost like a grad night 2.0 kind of situation out there at Disneyland, which, as we know, aren't big spenders either.
Right.
So you're getting bodies, but doesn't necessarily mean meaningful OI. We'll see.
Yeah, and even Blog Mickey in their article, or one of their articles, they had like 3 about this morning, even said they were going to dig into this more because the wait time data was showing like significantly lower wait times for a lot of June and obviously going to this summer. And yet they were reflecting the higher revenue. They were speculating the same thing. Maybe it's people that just aren't riding as many attractions, which does point to a pass holder audience coming in, because pass holders are not going to be as ride focused as your guests coming in for a week-long vacation that haven't been in a year or 2 years or something like that. And maybe they were buying merchandise more or something like that. So I think it's an interesting mix, because it's not the mix probably Disney wants, which they want those big spenders coming in on those week-long vacations that are infrequent guests. So they do this also. They tap into the pass holders when they need to. Right now is a period of time where I think most of these things opening this summer appealed mostly to pass holders in terms of getting them to come into the parks. And it is a very interesting mix when you're looking at this, because I do agree with you. I think the next quarter is I think they're both going to see down numbers. I mean, at least in attendance. We'll see Disney again. A lot of times they can have down attendance and still get revenue, coming through on that. But it's a very interesting the way this is looking. And just, I don't know. It's one of those things too. So you look at this as a battle between these two. It's not like it's a this quarter thing. This is a multi-year thing. So it's like, is this more like I get the impression from talking to people at Universal that they're more focused, and which makes sense. They're in market share mode still. They're a little bit more long-term focused about where they want to take some of this stuff. Whereas Disney, I think, is a little bit more reactionary to quarter by quarter, because they're obviously, they want that stock price to be bumped up. They're trying to really change the narrative off of last year of Epic, really, having these big quarters, and they were just kind of like, they were having big quarters themselves to a degree, but the attendance and stuff, not like they were kind of emulating or saying they were going to have. So it is very interesting just to watch all this play out, and it's not like it's going to slow down anytime soon, because both of them are spending billions, and this is why Epic's building those expansions. And somebody asked in the chat, why does Epic not have APs yet? It's those wait times. You can't throw APs into that mix with the wait times. You got Mario Kart at like 100-minute wait constantly, and that ride's not worth 100-minute wait. So until they get help, which is why they're going to move forward with these expansions, that's when you'll probably see APs. I contend you won't see them until 2028. And I kind of agree with Rogue. It could hurt Epic as it goes along without having APs there. But I suppose, like you were saying, if they do run into a position where the demand is lowering for that, you could see them introduce APs a little early if they need to. But that's why you don't have APs at Epic. And that does, like, that's not typically something you see. Usually at the 1 year mark, when you start seeing APs roll out for a new park or something like that. So it's kind of like I've alluded to as well. You're dealing with an Epic Universe effect that's not even at full effect yet, because and that's kind of Universal's fault, the way they designed this park. And really, how does this look when they don't have a bunch of new attractions opening for Disney? How does that quarter look compared to all that? And that is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. If gas prices still linger, if some of these macroeconomic things are still there, how does that look when you're looking at this quarter by quarter? Would be kind of interesting.
Oh, I know. Oh, absolutely. And this is why I'm very interested in the story right here, because when you look at Universal and how they're responding to the success of Epic, they're not letting up on the gas. Okay, some things have maybe have been a little bit later than they expected. They're not letting up. We're getting they just finished the track installation for Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift at Florida, which is very significant for Universal Studios Florida. You also have, they are just tearing down Poseidon as fast as they possibly can at Islands of Adventure in order to get maybe Poke Land, or I guess Poke Park, or whatever they're calling it now, the Pokemon-themed land or area in that specific venue right there. And also, too, you have Epic Universe going forward with its expansions as well. Now, we don't quite know the timeline on that. I've also heard of expansions for Universal Studios Hollywood after Fast and Furious. Hollywood Drift actually opens there as well. So, they're hammering there. They're trying to get these things open as fast as they can. Obviously, it's going to be a multi-year wait, but they are in the process of doing that. And there was some other something else, Jared, I want to go ahead and bring up before moving on away from the earnings right here. This chart that the company put out, let me see if I can actually put it up on screen right now to give everybody an idea of what is actually going on at Disney. It's right here. New experiences coming to Disney parks and resorts. Now, obviously, it's everything that we've heard of, right? There's no real big surprises. But to those actually watching this very, very closely, there were some things that came off as just a little bit odd. Or maybe finally something in our minds right here. Like, for example, Avatar experience. We've been talking about, hey, is it going to be Zootopia? Is it going to be Avatar? Clearly, they're doubling down on Avatar. But notice how they actually label that as an experience. Yeah. Then when you come over to the Cars area, right? They don't say Piston Peak. They don't say anything like that. They just say Cars themed area. That's a very interesting thing right there. What is the difference between an expansion, an experience, and an area? It doesn't quite make sense to me. Jared, can you make sense of any of that?
It's a really good question. It is odd. I'm guessing they may have used Cars themed instead of Piston Peak because general audiences are like, what's Piston Peak? I could see that argument there. Although Tropical America is the same thing. It's like you would think they would put Encanto or something there as well. But the Avatar experience is interesting because obviously they're doubling down a bit on Avatar coming. But what is an experience compared to if they would have said Avatar area, that would have been a little different because that's what they get used for these other ones. But yeah, calling it experience is interesting. I don't know what that means. I don't know what an experienced area is versus an actual themed area. I
Right.
don't really know. That is quite interesting that they
That
put
is
it
interesting.
that way.
And this reminds me of the talk when Bob Iger, when he originally announced Avatar was coming to Disneyland, he said Avatar Experience. And everybody's like, what the heck is an experience? That could
Right.
be anything. And so now we're back to that verbiage, which is frustrating. Have no idea what's going on there. It's bizarre. Also, too, look at Shanghai Disney Resort right there. Now, obviously, they're getting the Spider-Man coaster, but they're actually saying they're getting a Spider-Man themed area. I think that's the first mention that I've ever seen that they actually consider this a themed area, like a Marvel land, if you were, being added to Shanghai. I think it's pretty significant right here. Obviously, they're, you heard Josh D'Amaro. He was singing the praises of Sony for what they couldn't do, which was actually put out a successful Marvel film. But, they're capitalizing on that Spider-Man fervor right there. But themed area, I thought that was also pretty odd.
Yeah, I don't keep a lot up with the international parks, but I do remember the coaster. But yeah, I don't recall them ever saying it was a themed land, which is interesting. I don't think consider a land. I guess what does constitute a land versus just a ride? I guess would it be just extra things around it, or I don't know what they technically use internally for that. Would be
I don't know either. Is it like a retail component? Is there like a dining component? Like, what is a land? What is a park? What is it? I know they play around with these terms all the time, but they're using like 40 different terminologies in this one chart, and it's
there's no consistency. Yeah, because it's like it's like it's like also tropical Americas, but not area. It's just tropical Americas. Like it's just if I were to guess, and it's just a hunch, this chart was thrown together by an intern or maybe even AI pretty quickly, and they just took it and went with it. Does make you wonder, though, the Spider-Man themed land is an interesting thing too, if that's what you're actually doing, to reveal it in just this chart during an earnings call. That part's a little interesting.
Right, because it's distinct from Marvel themed attraction.
Right.
And then Spider-Man themed area. We know that it's going to be a Spider-Man drop tower. At least that's how it was pitched to us before, but now it's Marvel. So has the scope changed on that as well? A lot of interesting questions here. Like you said, don't know how much we can really take from this, given that maybe it is an intern that put this together. But hey, you know what? It's unofficial, documentation that they filed with the SEC. So.
And they know what the audience, they're going to put stuff like this. People are going to read into it. So you would think if this is what happened, which again, this is just me wondering, it does make you wonder if that's what actually happened. Why are I would, at the very least, make sure the labeling is what you want it to be in something. You're not revealing something or creating speculation that you don't want out there to begin with. But when you're talking about major corporations, you'd be shocked at the lack of oversight sometimes that happens. I think people assume a lot of these things are just, oh, yeah, they're buttoned up. I'm like, not always. Things slip through. People have deadlines. They're busy. Something like this I could totally see this slipping through the cracks. And then during the earnings call, they're like, oh, that's labeled wrong. Uh-oh. And now they kind of have to roll with it because what are you going to do? You're going to say that the chart's not right. And then that could create more questions about what else are you not checking on? So who knows though? That's just me speculating though.
It's really interesting. I just found that very curious. I know the Mountain King, I do believe on X, was making a note of this, and I do agree. It's a little weird how they play around with the verbiage, even within their own division. It's not like they're comparing it with other things, or how industry will use, oh, it's a Harry Potter park. Well, it's really a land, but
right.
And you get into the technicalities there. But Don't Make It Rain. The experience actually covers more things too. Okay, I do agree with that, but why is it distinct from a themed area? If in fact it's made up of a retail component, a dining component, both of these things are going to have it, or all three, that being Villains themed land, Cars themed land, and the Avatar experience. So why the different terminology? Very strange, very bizarre. And also too, Coco themed attraction.
Right.
Oh, whatever. That's just, that's clearly an error. Okay, whatever. It's just, you can, be frustrated about that. That is for sure. There's just something else I wanted to go ahead and bring up, and we're kind of going quickly here because we had a little bit of a blackout right there. So I do apologize. And hey, thanks to everybody, by the way. You guys were great, donating, super chatting, and supporting and staying with me. Really do appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much for that. Haunted Mansion refreshed facade, fully revealed at Magic Kingdom right here. This was very, very interesting because if you look at it, it looks great, looks phenomenal, and it's very consistent with its 1971 aesthetic that this attraction opened up with back in the day, which is very, very cool. They restored a lot of the color scheme associated with this. But if you notice very, very closely, actually, with these images, and let me see if I can actually get them on screen right now. Boom, there you go. You'll notice that it's a little bit more fantastical, more than it is authentic, which is very, very noteworthy. You can see some distinct shading actually being used right here, some weathering, right? You know how Walt said, we'll take care of the outside, the ghost will take care of the inside. Clearly, that's maybe not what they're going for here, which is very, very interesting. Now, when you look at this, you might think, what of it? Are we making too much of a fuss over this? Well, I don't think so, because there was a very interesting tweet that I actually saw right here. Since the current entrance did not receive the new paint scheme, I'm banking it's almost a guarantee that the mystery facility next to the Haunted Mansion will be the queue/entrance. You can see right here, this is a tweet actually provided by Josh Can't Hang. Let's go ahead and put that up on screen right now and show you what we're talking about. There you go. What I just read, and you can see the included images that he put in. You can see right here there are some distinct areas that maybe are not included, and that includes maybe the current queue structure. And we know that there's some mystery structures on the permits that have been filed by the Walt Disney Company. This is a greater look at the plan right here, right? The permit for the west side for all of these attractions. You can see some Cars Land stuff, or Piston Peak, I guess, stuff. You see some Villains Land stuff. But right next to the Haunted Mansion, there's this mysterious facility that nobody can figure out. People have speculated that it may be a bar. I certainly have, because, well, you already have a Pirates theme park. Why don't you go ahead and do a Haunted Mansion theme park? Got it on the cruise line, bring it to the parks. But a lot of people are saying that might be the queue structure right there. You can see it on your screen right now, how the current queue structure kind of buttresses up against the Haunted Mansion. And then in the upper left of your screen right here, you can see that mystery facility right there. What is that all about? Is it, in fact, for the queue for the Haunted Mansion? Are they redirecting it from where it's always been since 71 now to the other side? Jared, if they actually end up doing that, that puts it squarely in Villains Land, as astutely pointed out by Matt Lee, or Mattel Ghost Star here on X. What if Haunted Mansion becomes part of Villains Land? That has all kinds of implications to it, not the least of which being you effectively maybe remove Liberty Square off the table right here, which, that's a 1971 Magic Kingdom original right there. Again, maybe going the way of Yesterworld if it's taken off the table. Is there a chance, Jared, that Haunted Mansion has its queue now placed within the Villains Land footprint? Haunted Mansion becomes a Villains Land attraction, and maybe something else happens to Liberty Square. What say you?
I mean, the chances at this point, I think we talked about this a bit last night. I don't rule out anything at this point. You could definitely see it, especially if you. There's a couple things you could look at it. Is this a chance they could remove Liberty Square? Yeah, and even Drew the Disney Dudes alluded to the fact that he thinks Liberty Square might be on borrowed time. And you can look at even wanting to avoid any controversy with the Hall of Presidents going forward. And, Frontierland is going to be very, very different in the coming years as well. So I would not be shocked. And you've even pointed out the Harbor House there. There's no harbor there. So that doesn't make any sense now either.
Right.
So there's a lot of things you could point to that there might be some big changes further to happening here, which might be Liberty Square going away. It wouldn't shock me. Now, one thing you could say, if that's not in the cards, you look at the current queue for Haunted Mansion, that's constantly always backed up way into the land. I mean, it sometimes when it's busy, that thing stretches out. Maybe they're moving the queue over, putting it in part of Villains Land to beef up you can sit there and say you have, now you got more attraction Villains Land. You can make an argument that works, get a bigger queue, and then it frees up space there. Maybe that's it. But I don't think you can rule out that they might be looking at doing something with Liberty Square, because given what we've seen happen the past 10 years, it wouldn't shock me. It would not shock me if that's what they ended up doing.
And I will say that there has some precedent for an attraction not moving physically, but moving geographically, as it's been distinguished between lands. For example, the Matterhorn back in 1959, when that first e-ticket right there for Disneyland, as part of a, well, 3 e-tickets, the submarine voyage, and the Alweg monorail. When that first debuts there for the summer of 1959, it was originally in Tomorrowland. Now we know the Matterhorn bobsleds as being part of Fantasyland, but it wasn't always that way. So does the Haunted Mansion make that leap from Liberty Square to Villain's Land? It is, I think, a distinct possibility, and the lack of maintenance in that area is a little bit concerning, as Walt Disney World News Today pointed out right there. Okay, may have been a slow news day, folks, but I think it's worth bringing up right here, because Rusty Post covered with temporary cap at Liberty Square Magic Kingdom. This by Shannon Ace, August 4th, 2026. You can see right here, there's this decorative cap as put on this random railing over there in Liberty Square. And you can see what it's actually covering. Not so good. These facades, Jared, do need a little bit of assistance. They need a little help. And we simply haven't seen meaningful refurbishment actually take place in Liberty Square for a little while. That's a little bit concerning. We haven't seen investment in there ever since, I would say, like when the Muppets were actually there in Liberty Square for a period of time. Yeah. We don't see really anything going on in this distinct area. And Columbia Harbor House doesn't necessarily make sense, right? It's like there's no harbor. The other thing, too, is we've heard internally Disney a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that they have a presidential attraction in the Hall of Presidents, right? And they might be looking to do something distinctly different there in that space. They've alluded to it before in the past. I know when Disney's America was a thing back in the 1990s, as we covered it, actually, on Vash and Vixen, they were talking about, even back then, maybe taking the Hall of Presidents from Magic Kingdom, putting it perhaps in Virginia right there. So this has been long talked about, especially now in this very politically tense climate that we live in. Is it? I mean, I kind of am thinking, especially if Drew the Disney dude's saying it, I think Liberty Square, you guys might want to get in there now to go to your place with no restrooms and that amazing stripe that lines the walkways there.
Yeah, It's definitely a possibility. Although I will say, if they announce it during the 250th anniversary of America, that's not going to be a good look. I don't think this is an announcement they would make it D23 and say, by the way, we're getting rid of this. Would be one of those things like kind of after, they present what they're going to do. And then the next day it's like, by the way, that thing we announced is going into Liberty Square. I think if they did it, given a lot of the pent-up fervor that people have about the rivers being taken out, Muppets going away, all the changes that have happened, I think you would have a pretty big reaction from people online. And it would be it would turn into divisive yet again, because I think they don't like the idea. First off, potentially every 4 years, but every 8 years, you got to go in there and redo this ride. You got to go add animatronics in here for the new president and all this stuff. And then that brings potential protests and things. And I would get the impression they would like to not have that aspect of it in their parks. And I would not like that. I think that obviously this goes back to Walt and things that he wanted, but it wouldn't at this point with Disney. Maybe call me cynical. I just wouldn't be shocked by it. In anyways, I don't know if I'd expect it, but it wouldn't come as like I can't believe they're doing this. I'd just kind of be like, it's pretty consistent what they've been doing, to be quite honest. If they just went further, different.
Yeah, I know, right? Rivers of America, right? Gotta get rid of that. Walt Disney, from the time he conceived of Disneyland, he's like, I want a Mississippi stern wheeler. Gotta get rid of all that. Gotta get rid of Rivers of America. Gotta get rid of Liberty Bell. Okay. Jim Henson's last creative work. Can we please keep that? No, it has to go away right there. And many, many more. There are no more sacred cows. The Walt Disney Company does not care anymore. They care about one thing, and that is return on investment, ROI, or operating income, OI, right? That's what they care about. That's what they're moving forward with. And if they have something like Liberty Square that, well, isn't themed to an IP and maybe represents a different era of the Walt Disney Company, well, you can see why they might be interested in sidelining that, which is a very big shame because there was so much heart and talent and craftsmanship actually imbued in this land. I mean, the shutters being off kilter just a little bit. What an amazing design detail to reflect the time period, right? When they had leather straps on their shutters, right? Because all the metal had to be basically used for the war effort against the British Empire. It's amazing. No more. I think if we don't hear an announcement within the next 5 years, I'd actually be very surprised. And I will say, I do agree with you. Maybe not this D23 Expo, but if Villains Land, right, doesn't open probably 2030, given the construction images that we're actually seeing from BioReconstruct, then there is a possibility that they announce something, a fate for Liberty Square at the next Expo, and have it all prepared for the big debut of both Cars Land, Villains Land, and everything else. I think it's very interesting. Definitely watch this area because I think it's the next shoe to drop on the west side of Magic Kingdom. Orange Grove 55 there. Oh, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, also, if you think about they're putting cars in, they're expecting a lot more people to come in there. They probably, if you're thinking in the mind of how they would be thinking about this, they want something as a better draw over there than the Hall of Presidents and what they currently have. They would probably think like that is an quote unquote unoptimized space with the Hall of Presidents. We can put something in here that is much more in demand. Probably a show. I don't know if they would gut the whole thing, but I just think if you're accompanying it with the changes that are happening Frontierland, and I always kind of thought at many levels Frontierland was one of those things like it's a Walt idea, like you don't mess with that. If they're willing to mess with that, obviously take out the rivers. This is not that far of a stretch. And I agree with you. I think it might be around closer to Villains Land, getting away from the 250th, getting a little bit away from Rivers of America, and then making another announcement like this. I don't think they would do it so close to Rivers of America because I think they probably even know there's going to be a lot of angry people if we do this. But if they space it out, kind of like the Boiling Frog, it's like, well, people are going to be upset, but we're changing this park, and I could definitely see it. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to add that about.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And then I think that's brilliant commentary right there, Jared. I will never interrupt you, good sir, if I can avoid it anyway. Sometimes I do. It's not on purpose, though. I definitely love your commentary. And I will say, look, I thought I was going to be, sitting underneath the Tree of Liberty, enjoying this 1776 themed area, with all of the little bells and whistles there, just phenomenal. And then hearing that ka-chow sound right next door, I thought I was going to enjoy that, but looks like it might not be in the cards. Sorry, a little Cars humor there. Orange Grove 55 here coming in though. Land, area, etc. It's word games. Pandora will be a land. It's 8 to 9 acres with a big e-ticket. It's just as much a land as Super Nintendo World. It's even bigger. Disney just likes to play word games. I know. Wait. OG, come on. I absolutely know that they like to play word games. It's just the only unfortunate part of it is that it creates expectation when you play around with these terminologies, right? I understand it's not as maybe cut and dry as like Giga Coaster, for example. But when you say land, experience, park, these things, they obviously set the expectation up like what you can expect, especially from an investor standpoint. It's kind of like, okay, well, how big are these investments? Where's everything going? Very crucial, I think, to get that verbiage correct. But obviously, you want to play it a little bit close to the vest, a little bit ambiguous, that kind of thing. Go ahead, Jared.
Well, what if the Avatar experience is like the Moana walk through water experience, and you're just going to walk through and experience the water areas of Avatar, and that's the experience? I'm just saying, I don't know how mad people would be at Disneyland, but I feel like they'd be very upset if that was the case. I would be,
it's so funny because the OG knows I was with him. I was like, okay, if you have Bob Iger, right? He is the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. He is not going to get an earnings call. Talk about Avatar coming finally to Disneyland if it's like a meet and greet, right? We had this conversation with all kinds of people because they were saying meet and greet. People I respect saying meet and greet. I was like, no, it's going to be more substantial than that. Now the experience language is back, and
And you
It's
learn
like
about
I'm having
you
this
learn about
conversation all
the
over again.
Na'vi. Yeah, you go through and learn about the Na'vi and their ways, and
Yes.
it's a learning corridor experience there.
Right. Well, it would overcome the issues connected to capacity for like Navi River Journey, right? I mean, those boats are tiny. Now you can just have people walk through, and then you can have maybe somebody in a costume saying "Nawe ah, Nawe ah." It's gonna be fantastic.
They just
Right?
take the
That's gonna be awesome.
animatronic from the Na'vi River Journey and put her in there. It's a good listen. It's a good animatronic, but I'm just saying, you put
Yeah,
some
I agree.
it becomes people are like, oh wow, I feel like I'm in another planet. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but at the same time with Disney, it wouldn't shock me if that's what they ended up saying here, because I remember the Moana thing when they announced that. I'm like, it's a what? And all the advertising, we went and did it. Like, it's fine, but you're like, this is not something that's going to draw people to this park, is to go through and learn about water and play little tricks with it. It's a fun thing for kids, so that's kind of where it stops.
Yeah. I understand they were connected to this idea of like, okay, have a big ride next to a little ride, right? That way we have a more family inclusive adventure, and then something that was a little bit more upper tier with a height requirement and everything like that. It's a brilliant idea in theory, but to see the execution of some of these secondary attractions, right? Especially like Spider-Man over there and Avengers Campus and so forth. It's kind of like, I don't think this necessarily works.
Yeah.
But say la vie. Land experience, we will find out, I'm sure, at the D23 Expo coming up here. Actually, right here. And a guy with all kinds of coverage and more. He's right in front of you. He's captured the magic. Jared, where can people find you out there on this great, big, beautiful web?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I always enjoyed breaking this stuff down with you, and I always like when you bring the perspective. I'm like, I didn't think about that on some of these things. And financial reports have all sorts of caveats in there, so it's really interesting digging through these numbers. But you can find me at Captain Magic here on YouTube, and then if you're looking for theme park specific content, reviews and strategies for having a good vacation, you go to CTM Podcast with my wife and I, where we break all this stuff down, and we talk about the earnings report that's coming out tomorrow as well. But that's where you can find me. Thanks for having me. It's always a good time, and love breaking all this stuff down.
I'm breaking it down with you. I do apologize, Jared, for the internet issues right there. I had a segment all laid out for Tom Fitzgerald. I was finally going to do Tom Fitzgerald. It's on the name, actually, of this live stream right here. At least the original one. I'll have to edit it. But I was going to do Tom Fitzgerald. Going to do it with you, and we're going to go ahead and debate whether or not Tom Fitzgerald, force for good, force for bad, all of that and more. Could never get to it because it's just something happens this time.
It happens eventually. Internet issues, when they happen, they're very frustrating because you're just at the whims of. I had the same thing a couple weeks ago. I finally got him to send me a new modem, so I think my stuff's good now. But it is very frustrating, and not a whole lot you can do about it when it happens. It's kind of outside your control, so it's frustrating in that way.
Absolutely. And O2R coming in here. We were having so many issues. O2R, I really do apologize. Very disorganized today. I do. That's on me. O2RR coming in here with the $4.99. Thank you so much. Walt Disney World Guest of the Month award goes for August. Goes to all the hooligans that fought each other while waiting in line for the Pandora ride at Animal Kingdom. It's very interesting you bring this up, and it's a perfect time to bring this up, actually, because you might be swayed when it comes to your Guest of the Month hooligans, because tomorrow it's going to be all about guests going wild. And yes, we're going to bring up the Avatar conflict right there. There's no question. But we're also going to bring up a story about another influencer who causes a disruption at Disneyland and what actually happens. It's really, really interesting because, Jared, I don't know about you, but I don't like having a light shined in my face my entire ride on something like Small World. That happened. There was a little bit of a conflict. We'll go over that and much more tomorrow. That's going to be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern right here. But did you see the Avatar footage there?
I did. I did a video on it. It was great. Listen, you love seeing people go to theme parks and decide, before I even get on an attraction, let's just throw down in the queue. How about we do it this way? It shocks me that people will spend as much money to go on vacation to just throw it all away and get kicked out of a theme park. I'm just like, it's just, I don't. Who knows what was really going on? But it's just always funny to me when that stuff happens. And the video is, and lately, I don't know what this is. It's a lot of women being involved in these fights.
It's a lot. Well, that's interesting that you say that, because the other guest that I was going to talk about tomorrow is a woman. So it's like, A lot of gals out
Well,
there.
the
I don't
one
know
that
what's
you had
going
the
on.
lawsuit, they sued Disney over that fight a couple of years ago, the Fantasyland brawl that broke out in Disney World. That one with the for the most part, the aggressor was a woman. So it's like you're seeing these very aggressive like women getting into these conflicts and fights, and I'm just like, what is happening in the and it probably always happened to some degree. Now everybody has a smartphone and you can film it, but still, it's just usually expect to see dudes, deciding we're going to throw down or something, but it's not often. It's just like consistently, even Disney Springs, I'm remembering now, there's a brawl that happened, I think a year ago or something at one of the Disney Springs stores. That would involve women. I think you gals need to figure this stuff out. You guys got to talk it out. What are we doing?
Yes. This is, we obviously they're ladies and gentlemen. That's what they're referred to as. And ladies, gentlemen. There you go. Speaking of ladies, though, my producer was sidelined by this whole thing as well. I do believe she's able to speak now, so I'm going to go ahead and risk putting her on.
Yes,
Disney Fan 55, are you? Yes. I know we had some issues that plagued the entire Vash Sky ParkCast production team. Terrible right there. I know you've been
digging
highlighting
up our
some...
street.
Fantastic.
I went out and talked to the guys out there. Did you just cut our line? They're putting in fiber.
Oh, I see. Well, that's great if in fact they're putting in fiber, but we'll see whether or not that comes true. Arizona. But okay. I know you were highlighting some chats right there. Was there anything that you wanted to highlight before we actually get out of here and go on to the dish, where I believe Father Bradley's Fun is at a very interesting location when it comes to Fort Wilderness and everything going on there. Go ahead, Disney Fan 55, please.
Well, there was quite a few. Thank you so much for all of your chats. I tried to highlight as many as I could. Tried to highlight as many as I could here.
Well, I see Joshua right here, and I'll go ahead.
Yes.
And we'll take this one right here. Vash, just wanted to say thank you for the show. It's very nice having a show that I can listen to. Not have to worry about my 11-month-old hearing swears constantly like the other ones I listen to. Yeah, we really do try to keep that on the lowdown right there. Obviously, sometimes we're doing theme parking, got some guests on, they say some things, can't control that. But really do try to make this a little bit more family friendly, only because I know a lot of people who are interested in the parks do have those little ones, so we want to go ahead and make it safe for them. So, Jared, do appreciate you keeping it clean and
I got kids not far from me all the time, so I never know who's listening to me. So if I did, I'd be in big trouble if I started just using some really choice language. So my kids keep me in line, so I try to keep it as well. PG content, maybe G-rated content on some level.
We try, but we sometimes these happen. But and I know tomorrow we're gonna be featuring some video. I will say, not all of that is family friendly right there. I'm gonna try to remove as much as I can, but some things do go through.
There's two. If you're talking about the Pandora thing, the first video I put up with it got flagged, and I had to redo it and took out the second part because I believe you couldn't really hear it, but there was some cursing going on. So you might, if you look at that secondary angle, I don't know if they'll hit you on a live stream or not, but might be mindful of that because I got hit for it on my video initially. I had to redo it.
Well, that's a good pointer to point out right there. We'll go ahead and try to maybe break up with images rather than just video. Perhaps actually mute some stuff. We'll do our best to keep the family friendly nature of the program, but some things do happen. Do appreciate you making a note of the effort, and I do believe that just about covers it. Again, tomorrow 6:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll go ahead and do Guests Gone Wild. Should be very interesting. Jared, I want to go ahead and thank you for joining me right here. I know Father Bradley's buddy. He's like, wait, he's like, hey, what's going on? We're getting over there. Had the issue right there. Backed us up. We're going off right now. Do appreciate everybody coming in for this live stream right here to talk about earnings call coverage. I know there's been a lot of it, so thank you so much. Hopefully we made it fun for you. Hopefully we made it really cool for you. And maybe you'll join us tomorrow to talk more about these Disney theme parks. From Jared, capture the magic. From Vash Sky, remember, the sky is the limit.